Hey folks, this is Rhykker with a Diablo 3 patch 2.6 Necromancer guide on the Trag'Oul Bloodlance build. Now it seems like this build is not just the best Necromancer build, it is probably the best build period of all classes. As of the time of this recording, I've seen this build clear a Greater Rift 113 solo, and it's only going to go higher. I'll be updating my tier list of best builds for Season 11, and it would not surprise me if this is number 1. Now what you're seeing me clear here in the gameplay footage is a Greater Rift 90, but again, it can clear at least a 113 if you have all the Paragons, all the Coalizons. I don't even have optimized gear. I have under 1,000 Paragon levels. If I can do a 90, you can do a 90 with this build. And while this build isn't the fastest build, it cleared a Greater Rift 90 relatively easily. I didn't break a sweat. I cleared it with about the same speed and ease as I cleared a Greater Rift 70. It just took maybe a little bit longer. But for the most part, the build doesn't even really care because it's just melting elite packs and the Rift Guardian so quickly. And that's the focus of this build. You're moving from pack to pack. You're not killing any trash. You're relying on some heavy hitting powers on massive cooldowns. So it's basically just stay alive during the cooldowns, find the next pack, and then obliterate it in seconds. We're going to take a look at the gear and the skills that you'll want. And let's start with the gear, the overview of the set, Trag'Oul's. Now, as we're looking at Trag'Oul's here, we're just going to quickly note that the nerf has come through for the BLOODstorm build. That's based on the Inarius set, and what was nerfed was how often the Mirene triggers. Now, I'll have to do a bit more research before I can tell you guys exactly how bad that nerf is, but I think preliminary reports are that we're losing about 5 Greater Rift levels of power. I wish this nerf did not go through because Trag'Oul's was already emerging as the superior build. With this nerf to the BLOODstorm build, Trag'Oul's and Inarius may no longer be even within 10 Greater Rift levels of each other, but we'll have to see. So the 2-piece bonus, Blood Rush, gains the effect of every rune. Blood Rush is your mobility skill, you're gonna love it. You're gonna need to be using it a lot. We'll go over exactly what that gives you when we look at the skills. For set, while at full life, your healing from skills is added to your max life for 45 seconds up to 100% more. What this effectively means is that most of the time you're going to have double health. And the 6-piece bonus makes your blood skills deal a ton more damage at the cost of more life, but your healing from skills is also doubled. Now, one thing about this build, I don't know that I would play it in hardcore. That's just me personally. As you'll see, I die a couple times in this rift, but with more practice play, you might be able to avoid dying as well. This build deals just so much damage, it's difficult to ignore, and it would not surprise me if the hardcore people eventually adopt this build too, maybe with some slight changes to make it a little bit more survivable. Is that a word? That's a word now. For our belt, we'll want Dainty's Binding. This basically just doubles our toughness at all times. You should always have at least one enemy, preferably as many as are on screen, under the effects of Decrepify. We're going with the Traveler's Pledge and a Compass Rose. That set gives you some nice toughness when you need it, and it's going to bring out more damage when you need that. Fortunately, this build is very mobile when you're not dealing damage, and when you are dealing damage, you're very stationary, so this set is perfect. We're going to go with the convention of elements as well. This ring is more powerful for the Necro than for any other class, because the Necromancer has fewer possible elements than any other class. It only has 3. Physical, cold, poison. That means that this ring only rotates through those 3 elements, meaning you're getting 33% uptime on your element of choice. In this case, it will be physical. And because this build focuses on burst damage, you really want to be timing it with your convention window. When you're dealing out your big damage burst, you're going to be dealing it at triple damage, thanks to the convention. Now for the bracers, we're actually just going with Nemesis bracers. This build is an elite pack hunter. We are not killing trash. In this footage, the only time you see me killing trash is when I've put out my big burst of damage, I'm still in that damage window, and I've killed all the elites on screen, then I'll clean up whatever trash before my big burst damage window closes on me. Nemesis bracers make you spawn more elite and champion packs. For your weapon, you want Trag'Oul's Corroded Fang, and we only want this because we want to deal more damage to cursed enemies. Mine only rolled 158 damage out of a possible 200. That's terrible. And yet I'm still doing a 90 easily. At 200% damage, a perfect roll, you'd be dealing triple damage to enemies. In our cube, we're looking at Rylina's Shadow Hook. This gives you even more damage for every point of max essence you have. We're using the Corpse Whisper Pauldrons because corpselance is our only source of damage, and it is crazy damage. And we're going to use a Crisbin Sentence in our cube to double our damage against enemies that are control impaired, which will be all enemies at all times. Now, as for our offhand, it actually doesn't really matter. There's no offhand that has a power that really benefits this build, so you're going to be looking more so for the stats, which we'll get to after we go through the skills. Looking at those skills, we've got Corpselance, Blood Lance. Corpselance is possibly the highest damage skill the Necro has, and Blood Lance is the variant that goes with Trag'Oul's set. Just be aware that this costs you 4% of your health every time you shoot off a lance. 2% base chance, but because of Trag set, it's doubled. While that might not seem like much, if you're gonna shoot off 20 of these at once, that's 80% of your health. Fortunately, we'll be mitigating that with Devour Cannibalize. Not only does this restore essence, it also restores health. 3% doubled, 6% per cast. And in order to not have any issues with running out of corpses, we have Land of the Dead. This makes all corpse skills free. So, when there are enemies to kill, you are spamming Corpselance and Devour. Be spamming both those buttons. You're never going to lose health. The Devour will counteract the cost of Corpselance. That will also enable you to max out your doubled health from Trag'Oul's set, and it'll restore the essence that you're going to lose from casting Decrepify, which we'll get to in a moment. Frozen Lands is a really strong crowd control effect. It will save your life if you are in the midst of a ton of enemies. They're just all going to freeze. The elites will unfreeze, but the regular monsters you can basically ignore. Now the Cursed Decrepify, of course, we need to take, and we're going with Borrowed Time because this build is exceptionally cooldown dependent. Why? Because of Land of the Dead. We want to be able to pop Land of the Dead every time we get to an elite. Borrowed Time lets us squeeze out another 20% cooldown reduction. And of course, it nerfs enemies. Then we're taking Simulacrum Reservoir. The only reason for this is so that it doubles your max essence. Again, that goes back to our Rylina's Shadow Hook that makes you deal more damage for every point of max essence you have. So when you're going to decide to be attacking, when your big damage window opens, you pop Land of the Dead and Simulacrum together, then spam Corpselance and Devour non-stop until everything is dead or your window's closed and then all the ensuing corpses have been used up. If you do need to keep cleaning up outside of Land of the Dead, stop spamming Devour and just spam Corpselance, or you might have to find the right balance to avoid killing yourself. Then lastly, Blood Rush. Again, we have every single rune. Potency doubles your armor for 2 seconds after casting. You want to cast Blood Rush every 2 seconds to maintain this buff. Transfusion will let you heal by 2 doubled, 4% for every enemy you pass through. So you're actually going to Blood Rush through enemies to heal. That is your most consistent form of healing. Molting lets you leave behind a corpse. You can then use that corpse for a Blood Lance or for a Devour, but again, this will be a very insignificant part of your damage. One corpse every couple seconds or even every second pales in comparison to the infinite corpses you get during Land of the Dead. Hemostasis removes the health cost, thank God, and Metabolism lets you store up to 2 charges. Blood Rush is a really good power, and as you learn to time your Blood Rushes right, you'll be able to really avoid taking a lot of damage, or at least dying. You'll be able to heal yourself back up during your moment of weakness, your huge moment of weakness, which is when Land of the Dead and Simulacrum are on cooldown. Now, if you time things right, these two should come off cooldown at the same time, or at least very roughly. And one of our passives, Blood is Power, will help with the cooldowns as well. After cumulatively losing 100% of your max life, all ability cooldowns are reduced by 20%. This effect cannot reduce an ability's cooldown more than once for each time that ability is used. Note that this does not say after taking damage, it's after losing health. So something that you could actually do, if you're gutsy, is shoot off Blood Lances and lose health in order to help proc your Blood is Power. Now, because this build is so vulnerable between your damage windows, Final Service is almost mandatory. Spreading Malediction combines well with Borrowed Time. Again, with Decrepit Fawn, we want to have at least 20 enemies under the effects in order to gain that 20% cooldown reduction, so this combines perfectly with Spreading Malediction, which makes you deal more damage for every cursed enemy. And one thing you notice me trying to do is I try to herd enemies together. When I find a pack, before I pop my Frozen Lands and Simulacrum, I'm trying to herd monsters together. What I'm really trying to do is find more than one pack and lure 2 packs to each other so that with one cast of Land of the Dead, I can take out 2 packs, rather than have to wait for the cooldown again for a second pack. And of course, in luring the packs together, I'm also luring other monsters in order to build density for my Borrowed Time and Spreading Malediction. Last passive, Standalone, doubles your armor. Real simple. On to the exact stats you want on every piece of gear. I'll note that again, my gear is not perfectly optimized. Do as I say, not as I do, and I'll have a link in the description to a D3 planner link showing all the perfect gear that you want to aim for. On your shoulders, Intelligence, Vitality, Cooldown, and Corpselance damage. Get secondary resistances wherever you can. Helm, Intelligence, Vitality, Crit Chance, and a diamond in there. For your amulet, you want Physical Damage, Crit, Crit. For your gloves, Intelligence, Crit, Crit, Cooldown. We're getting cooldown just about everywhere that we can. My total cooldown before being raised by any skills and in combat is 50.63%. Literally the only place that I'm not getting cooldown is on the amulet. For the chest, Intelligence, Vitality, Corpselance damage. Bracers, Physical, Intelligence, Vitality, Crit Chance. The belt, Intelligence, Vitality, Life, and Armor. Pants, Intelligence, Vitality, Armor. For your boots, Intelligence, Vitality, Armor. And then the last one, it could be Move Speed, it could be All Resist. If you're getting Move Speed though, then definitely get All Resist as a secondary. For your compass rose, Intelligence, Crit, Crit, Cooldown. For your convention, Crit, Crit, Cooldown. For your weapon, Intelligence, Damage percent, Cooldown. Max Essence as a secondary, very important. Your offhand, Intelligence, Vitality, Crit, Cooldown, and Max Essence. Again, the exact offhand you use is not important. You're looking for, 1, a Ancient, because that's going to give you higher stats. And 2, you just want the right stats. Intelligence, Vitality, Crit, Cooldown, and the Max Essence. For your Paragon points, make sure you have a total of 25% move speed, then max out your Essence, then Intelligence dump. For offense, Cooldown, Crit Chance, Crit Damage. For defense, Life, Armor, All Resist, and utility doesn't really matter. And that wraps up this guide. Leave a comment with your thoughts. Do you prefer the Trag'Oul's build or the BLOODstorm build? Thanks for watching. Special thanks to my Twitch and Patreon supporters for making these videos possible. If you enjoyed this video, please share it, check out these other videos, and subscribe to join Rhykker's Raiders for more Diablo content.